Let's talk about MFA. It's come up a lot in support for Tarvent, people asking questions about why they have to use an authenticator app or install an application other than Tarvent, which you don't need to install Tarvent since it's web-based, but people are asking questions about it. And so instead of just answering support questions about it, I thought it would be best if you hear directly from us on what MFA is, why did we choose to go the route that we did, and how it impacts you logging into Tarvent. Now, I've got some slides to show you, and the only reason we're using slides is just because it's going to be easier than switching between a bunch of different applications. Well, not a bunch, but between Tarvent and email and an authenticator app. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to show you some slides on that and kind of go over some of the questions that have come up and how this works. So let's get into it. So the first thing, MFA, what is it? MFA, as you can see on screen here, MFA is just it's multi-form or multi-factor authentication. So it just requires 2 or more ways to identify you before you're able to log in. And the reason for that is because hackers, if they can guess your password, then they're going to be able to access your account. With 2 or more forms of authentication, then it's much more difficult for a hacker to access your account, because not only do they have to guess your password, but then they're going to have your cell phone, or in some other cases, there's other forms of authentication that could be used, but they're going to have a physical asset on them in order to be able to log in. That's a lot more difficult. MFA is being used all across the world. It's being used by banks, which are some of the most strict, but it's also within the tech sector, which we fall in. It's used about 87% of the time, or by 87% of the companies out there, and that's continuing to grow. So with that, the possible forms or possible factors, there's 3 that qualify for MFA. So the first thing is something you know. So the something you know is going to be your password, OTP, which is a one-time password, or a PIN. So like when you're using your credit card, not only do you give a credit card, but sometimes you have to enter a PIN number, and that's something that you know. So something you have is going to be the second form, or one of the additional forms that you can use. So with a smartphone, you can use an authenticator app, or you can use SMS. And you can also use a security token. And that security token is typically like a little USB dongle that goes into a USB port, and that has a security token on it. And then the last thing is something you are. So that's you as a person in most cases. And so you can use biometrics like a fingerprint or facial recognition, or there's other biometrics if you get into some pretty intense security stuff. So for us, the reason that there's asterisks here, just so you're aware, those asterisks are the most secure forms of those 2 particular options. So for something that you know, an OTP, or a one-time password, is a good option because that creates a passwordless system. You don't have to remember a password. We're going to give you a password every time that you log in, and that is going to be a different code each time. So there is no way to hack your password because it's different every time. Now, the second one is the authenticator app. There's 2 ways we could go with with your smartphone, and that is a authenticator app or using SMS. So SMS is easy because you don't have to install any other application. So that makes it really easy. The problem with SMS is that if it's not encrypted, which end-to-end encryption is just not available on SMS unless you're going Android to Android or Apple to Apple. But if you go Android to Apple, or you're going from an application like Twilio, then those are not encrypted. So because of that, SMS is not a very good option. It's still good. It's just not the best option. So the authenticator app is by far the most secure option. Otherwise, the security token is certainly very, very good to use because it's a USB dongle. So as long as you don't leave it at a computer that's publicly accessible, or at your office where somebody can just walk up and use it. So as long as that's not the case, then a security token works out really well. And then for the other, with a fingerprint and so on, that's just a little bit different. We're not going to get into that because that requires some hardware, usually like a special webcam or whatnot to be able to handle that. So now within Tarvent, we're going to jump in here, and I've got some things blocked out just for security reasons. But so once you log into Tarvent, if you want to create a new user, first thing you're going to do is you're going to select account, and then you're going to go to user and security. So in the users and security area, you can hit the plus to add a new user. What that does is it creates a user invite. So by creating the user, you're not actually creating a user. You're just telling Tarvent, this is my intent. I want to add this user, but the user is not going to be created. So you click the plus button, and then once you click the plus, we're going to show you a screen to invite a user. You're going to add in some basic information like the first name, last name, email address. Those three are all required. Then you've got a message. The message is going to show up on the user invite. So as soon as you get done and you click send invite, the user that you're trying to add or the email address you're trying to add, they're going to get an email. It's going to come from Tarvent, and it's going to let them know that they are invited to have access to your account. We give them your account name, and I'm actually going to show you that email so you can see. But you can also put in a message in there as well, so you can make it a little more personalized. Now, I know we're talking about MFA, but another point I want to bring up is this partner user. Some people ask questions about that. There's no functionality behind the partner user. The only thing that does is it flags a user as a partner, as like a third-party consultant that might be working for your company. And that when you go to the list, you'll be able to see that and be able to know that, oh, that is not an internal employee. That is somebody outside or external to the company that has access to my account. So that's the only reason that we put that in there. Now the roles, you just decide what roles that user is going to have once they create their user. That lets Tarvent know, so when they create their user, we can assign them to different roles. So these roles are going to give them certain rights within the system. Those roles also define what audiences they have access to. So you're going to want to set that up first before you create a user. So once you do this and you get all the information filled out, the send invite will be activated so you can then send that email. Now the recipient is now going to get this email. And so this is just test one, but it gives you a really good idea of how it looks. So they're going to get this email. It'll have their first name in there that you enter in. And this is just our demo account, but it just says the Breckworks LLC has invited you to join. Now there's two options. So we try to make this as simple as possible, but there's two options. If that new user has ever been in Tarvent before, they've logged in using their email address, they're going to click, I've logged in before. So that tells our system, oh, we don't need to actually create a new user. We're just going to assign that existing user access to, we're going to grant that existing user access to your account. If they've never signed in before, it's a new email address that Tarvent doesn't know, and they will know this. They should know this because they'll know if they've been in Tarvent before, then they can just sign up. And so what that does is that will actually create a user within Tarvent and then lets them associate that user with the account. So if they are brand new to Tarvent and have never been in our account before, which for now is probably going to be the case, as Tarvent grows, then that will change. But so when they go to log in, then they're going to be able to see the sign up. You enter the email address, you click send one-time password. This will then change. There'll be a little input here where you could put in that to validate that OTP. And then they'll put in their first name and last name. So now when they do this, they're able to put in whatever information they want. The most critical thing is that they use the email address that you sent it to. So once they do that and they click the button to log in, they're going to see this screen saying that your invite was accepted and you can now go to the account. Really, really straightforward on how to do that. So then the next time they log in, so the very first time they log in, they do not have to set up MFA. So that's the nice thing. We want to make it easy for people to log in to get into the system. However, we do want people to use MFA. So after a certain period of time, and that time can change, there's a lot of things that happen when you log in that we do with security checks to make sure that you are who you are. And if we feel that you're not who you are, then we're going to ask you for MFA information. However, when you log in the second time, no matter what, the second time you log in, we're going to require you to add in MFA or configure MFA in our system. So now you're going to load whatever app that you want to load for the authenticator. If you want to use Google Authenticator, you can. Otherwise, you can use Microsoft Authenticator, you can use Duo Mobile, you can use Authy 2FAS, which is called 2FAs. But there's several different authenticator apps that you can use depending on the operating system that your phone uses, whether it be Apple, Android, or what have you. And also your preference. Some people do not like working with really large companies like Microsoft and Google, thinking Big Brother is watching them. Other people don't care. So you pick the authenticator app that you want to use. Once you pick that, you're going to scan this QR code, which we've obviously made that QR code so it doesn't work. But you're going to scan that code, or you're going to enter in these characters here. And this is just a code that you can use to manually enter. If your phone doesn't have a camera on it, or you don't have the ability to use the camera on it, then you can always put in that code. Once you put in that code, that configures the application. And once that application is configured, it'll generate a code that's time sensitive, usually for 30 or 60 seconds. And during that time, you can take that code, enter it here, and hit continue. Now, just something to put your mind at ease is that these authenticator apps, they work even if there's no internet. There is no connection between that application and us, or that application and like Microsoft or Google or what have you. So that code generation is just a matter of a security code that gets passed to you and the time of day. So based on those two things, it's going to calculate that code. So your authenticator app would work even in airplane mode with no access to the internet. So once that's done and you configure MFA, you're able to log in. From that point on, you're not going to be required to use MFA every single time. We're going to look for things based on your browser and IP and a whole bunch of different things. We're going to look at a bunch of stuff and we're going to decide, do we need to prompt you for MFA? Does this look potentially suspicious or not? If it doesn't, you're just putting in your email address, your one-time password, and you're done. Otherwise, you may end up having to put in the code from your MFA, or from the authenticator app, but that's only every once in a while that will happen. Otherwise, it's pretty seamless. Once you set it up, you're going to forget about it until the next time you get prompted for it, but it's not on a regular basis. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease. We are not doing this to make it so it's super difficult to get in to access your information. We want your information secure, because the last thing we want is a hacker to be able to access your information and then you're calling us asking us why we didn't protect your data. So your data is protected as much as we possibly can. We're going to continue to improve it. But that is why MFA is set up. So we hope you guys understand. We apologize for having to add in another app into your phone if you don't already have an authenticator. But hopefully you understand our goal is to keep your data as absolutely secure as possible. With that, I hope you guys enjoy Tarvent. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.